Everybody to the Agrifoods and Garden Show. My name is Chris Swyers, and I'm with a company called CD's Trees. We have a tree nursery located in Logie Bay on Marine Drive, and we've been established for about 19 years now. And our goal when we started was to propagate and grow plant material that we could sell within the province. So as opposed to having to import most of our plant material, now we can grow it ourselves. So in that process, we had to learn a lot of things about how to propagate plants and how to make it all work, basically. And still a lot of people ask, how can you go about getting a seed to grow and making a tree grow, and what are the proper methods? And there's a whole bunch of things that come into play here, and I could probably talk for the rest of the day about all of them, but I won't. I'm only going to give you about 10 or 15 minutes, and that's enough, I think. But what I've done here today is I've harvested some seed from one of my own trees, and I want to show you what the process is as we go through to take it from this stage to this stage. And in this case here, I have a laburnum seed from a laburnum tree, more commonly known as a golden chain. And I'm sure if you've seen them, you've seen the long yellow flowers hanging from the tree. Well, after the flowers go away, that produces a pod which then forms a seed inside. So we can collect that seed and grow that tree again from that seed. And if you're a little bit selective about which tree you pick it from, then hopefully some of the genetics will fall through and you'll get a very similar tree. Seed is kind of like people, you know, you never get them all the same exactly, but if you are lucky enough to get some of the same characteristics, then you might get another nice tree. So what we would do then, after we collect this seed, we basically just strip it off and get it ready to open the pods, right? When you look at the pods have little bumps in them, and you can feel where the seed is, right? So all we do is tear them open like that until we can get at the seed, and out falls a little, I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but it's pretty close because it's a small seed. So we'll just pick them out of there and collect them that way, right? It's a tedious process if you have to do any amount of them, right? But, you know, I usually do them sitting at the table watching TV or something like that. You know, it makes it a lot easier and a lot less boring. So once you've got enough seed, then I've collected some here. I'm not sure you can see those, but you can see how small they are, right? And in some cases, not all, but some cases, the seed has an outer shell type. It's a little bit hard, you know, when you press it, it feels hard. So we had to put that seed through a process to soften it up and get it ready for germination, right? So one of the ways that we can do that, we leave it in the warm for about a week in a well, cool, but not cold, not warm, just kind of mediocre temperature, right? Once we get to that point, the seed is normally dry then at that point. So we take a moist paper towel and we'll lay the seeds in that paper towel. And what we want to do is put it through a process called stratification, which is a cold treatment. And what that does is inside the seed there's an embryo, and we want to fool it into thinking that it's time to grow. So after the cold period, when it comes back out into the warm, then we have a seed that thinks winter is over and now it wants to grow again. That's very similar to the same process that you would see happen in nature where the seed falls out of the pod onto the ground, and it goes through a cold treatment through winter. Then in the spring when it warms up, then it starts to grow. The only thing is that process is very haphazard, so a lot of seeds don't make it through that process. So we can help it along by pushing it through this process, and by keeping it in a moist paper towel, then it prevents the seed from drying out. And we would just take a plastic bag like this and put the moist paper towel with the seed, put it right in the bag, close it up, and we put it in the fridge for a couple of weeks. And when we take it out, then the seed it's ready then to start growing again. So once we've waited for 2 weeks, and I won't make you wait, we'll take the seed back out again, and hopefully by that time the shell on the seed has softened a little bit, so we'll just pick them up and we'll place them in the container where we're going to germinate that seed. And because it's a relatively small seed, it doesn't need a big space. You can use something like a Jiffy pot or something like that. You can use basically any type container you want to try to germinate a seed. We use a seed tray because we do lots of them, right? And once we put the seed in place, we'll just take a little bit of sand like this and spread it over top of the seed, because you don't need very much to cover that seed. And we want to make it as easy as possible for that seed to come up and get out of the ground, right? So when the seed does germinate, it'll produce a little small seedling coming up through the soil. And the other reason we use the sand is the sand will drain fairly well, and we don't want a lot of moisture around the base of that plant when it comes up, because we'll get a phenomenon called damping off sometimes, which occurs. It's a fungus, and it occurs if the plants are too close together or if the soil is too wet around the base of the plant. So that's a very common occurrence if those conditions apply. So once we have watered our tray and filled it out and it's all ready, we'll take that tray, in a small instance anyway, and put it in a plastic bag. And the reason we do that is because we want to contain the moisture that we put in there and keep everything from drying out. So we'll put that inside the bag with a couple of sticks just to keep the plastic from falling down on top of the tray. And then if we do get any germination in the tray, there's lots of room for it to grow. And we don't close that bag up tight. We just leave it a little bit of room to breathe, but it helps to contain the moisture that's in the tray, and it also helps to keep it a little bit warmer. We'll take that tray and put it in a nice warm spot, somewhere between 18, 20 degrees, and it usually will give us some seedlings within probably a month or so, right? Now, it's important to remember that if you harvest your own seed, then these seed are not necessarily like a cultured seed, in that they will probably germinate sporadically. So you won't get them all come up to one time. You'll get a number of different ones, different cells germinate at different times. So we give it a little bit of time to grow and germinate. And once we see that most of the tray is populated, then we'll take it out of the bag and just let it grow until the seedling reaches a point where we can see the root system starting to extend out past the perimeter of the pot. So we want to give that tree seedling lots of room to grow, and in order to do that, then we'll remove it from this tray and put it in a container perhaps around this size. And we use this size. Basically, you'll end up with a plug that's maybe this high and an inch around. And so we don't want to put that plug in a container that's too big, so that we have a lot of water accumulate in the bottom of the container, because that's just a good place for disease and fungus and that sort of stuff to breed. So we use a smaller container at first when we take them out, and we just transplant as the plant grows and outgrows each container. We'll transplant one to the next, and so on. And we'll do that from this size container all the way up. I think the largest container I have is a 96 liter, which is about this big around. Yep. So we use basically a two-finger approach. So if I can put 2 fingers in next to the plug, then the size of the pot is okay, right? And we've done our job well. And hopefully you'll end up with a tray of seedlings like that you can plant, right? I got a few minutes for some questions, if anybody's got any. Go ahead. You leave this, the stratification process probably takes anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the seed that you're using. And well, some seed requires a different process altogether, but in this process, we leave them for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then take them from there, put them in here. If we'll watch this container here just to make sure that it doesn't dry out, and if it does, then we'll just use a mister to lightly dampen the soil again. Anyone else? No more questions. That makes my job real easy. When we take it from this stage to this stage, usually we'll leave that inside, because this stage here is pretty fragile, and if you put that outside, then there's a good chance that it's going to break, right? Or somebody might mow it, you know. Right on. Been there, done that. So when it gets about this stage, it's more visible, the trunk is a little sturdier, and it's a lot easier to manage once it gets to that stage, right? So that's my rule of thumb here, right? When I get it big enough I can see it outside in the grass, I'm good to go. Anybody else? Okay, well, I have to give away this tree, so I'm going to give it to the lady who asked the questions. Thanks very much for coming in.